John MacArthur explains today the outcome of his legal battle with the state of California and the county of Los Angeles. If you aren't aware, Grace Community Church has been battling with the state of California and the county of Los Angeles for well over a year now, and has incurred extensive legal costs because of this. The county and the state have both enacted regulations and restrictions against them, which they have argued are unconstitutional and which are clearly unconstitutional. Have threatened to put John MacArthur in jail, have revoked lease agreements with them for parking spots, and even shut off utilities to their buildings. Enforced congregation limits, capacity limits, have attempted to enforce mask mandates, and even gone as far as to restrict whether or not they're allowed to sing in their congregations. So, needless to say, it's been an uphill battle for Grace Community Church and John MacArthur. Recently, within the last week, he has finally prevailed against the tyrannical governments, and both the state of California and the county of Los Angeles have each agreed to pay $400,000 in legal fees to. We originally reported that it was to Grace Community Church, but as he states here, it is actually being paid to the Thomas More Society, who has been taking up the legal challenge on their behalf. So they are the ones that are recouping the funds from the state and the county. Also, one of the most notable attorneys that have been in this case is one of Donald Trump's attorneys, Jenna Ellis. She is actually attending this service today, which is wonderful. John MacArthur is a gospel preaching, Bible preaching pastor, and Jenna Ellis, we do believe that she. Well, I mean, we can't know for sure 100%, but she does appear to be a Bible-believing Christian. But she is also a very talented attorney. So they were blessed to have her on the team, and now she is being blessed in return to be able to sit in John MacArthur's congregation and hear the gospel and the Bible preached, and preached rightfully. So I want to play for you today what John MacArthur said at the beginning of his service about this legal challenge and how they are finally able to move on without restriction and to do the honorable thing and worship God freely. So here we go.
As a congregation, so I want to give you a little bit of information. You may have heard that this past week, the state of California, the county, the city, the health department entered into a settlement with our attorneys, and that case is completely settled as of now. You can read about it in the Grace today, but I thought I'd give you a little bit of a rundown on some of the milestones over the last year or so. It was last July 23rd, 2020, when we wrote an article called "Christ, Not Caesar, is the Head of the Church." That was our declaration that we would follow Jesus Christ, and where the government told us to do something he told us not to do, or the government told us not to do something he commanded us to do, we would follow Christ. And that's the document, that Christ, not Caesar, is head of the church. So August 12th of 2020, Grace Community Church filed a lawsuit against the Governor Newsom and Mayor Garcetti and the others who we felt were involved in this, the county and the health department as well. And what we alleged in that lawsuit was that health orders and actions violated the California Constitution's guarantee of free exercise of religion, as well as the United States Constitution, that it disallowed us to have liberties that the Constitution gave us to have liberty, substantive due process, freedom of speech, equal protection under the law, and separation of powers. We didn't do that to be rebellious, we did it to be obedient. And I've said this a few times, our obedience is to Christ. We understand the sphere of government, and in government's sphere we submit gladly and happily as a part of our duty to God. But when government steps in and tries to tell the church what to do, it has overstepped its bounds, and that's why we took the stand that we took.
There has been some criticism that originally when this COVID, if you want to call it a pandemic, began, that John MacArthur's church did shut down. I just want to clarify, that is fair criticism. Originally, Grace Community Church did shut down and follow the orders of the state. Now, at the beginning, I'll say this. Nobody knew really anything that was going on about this. Nobody understood this disease. Nobody really knew what to make of it. There are faithful churches out there that never shut down in the midst of all of this. Never shut down. And praise be to God, those pastors and those churches that did that should be commended. So the criticism here, I do believe, is legitimate, but John MacArthur's church has been very heroic in this effort when they did eventually take on the lead role in this legal battle. Because what John MacArthur's church has accomplished in this legal battle really sets the precedent for much of the legal battles in the future when the government tries to do this again. And they will. You can rest assured that they will. So we are very thankful for that. But we want to give proper and legitimate praise to those who actually stood their ground from the very beginning, actually did incur threats of and actual retaliation from the government, restrictions and that are much harsher than what Grace Community Church incurred. And we don't hear about them because they're not a big, well-known church like Grace Community Church is. So I just want to throw that in there. There is valid criticism there, but on the other hand, we should be very thankful that a church with a pastor of John MacArthur's stature has been able to take this battle on, really to represent the entire church in front of our government. Our national and our local and our state federal governments now see that if churches are willing to stand up and fight this battle, they're not going to win. They're not going to win. And we really do have John MacArthur and Grace Community Church to thank for that.
August 14th, 2 days later, the LA County Health Department filed a lawsuit against Grace for violating the health orders, and they called us a public nuisance and requested injunction for Grace not to meet as a church, even outside, inside or outside. The County of Los Angeles requested that the pastor and church be held in contempt of court. They sent us a cease and desist letter threatening daily fines of $1,000, threatening to arrest me and other leaders for violating the order. Nevertheless, we violated the order because we were committed to be obedient to the Lord, and of all times, this particular time made the church even more essential and more critical. September 10, 2020, a judge approved the preliminary injunction against Grace Church and barred us from conducting worship services unless we fully complied with all the county health orders, which collectively would make any meeting utterly impossible. At the time, I pointed that out to you. Then that subsequently led to as many as 12 hearings, which kept being postponed. And the Lord was very kind to us. He gave us some amazing, amazing lawyers. Jenna Ellis, Paul, Jonah, and Charles Lamandry. Jenna and Paul are here this morning. We need to say thank you to you for thank you. I don't think that's ever happened at a sermon, do you? No, we're deeply grateful. I think you caught that. That was spontaneous affection and gratitude. And Thomas More Society, who incurred all the costs, and Grace Church incurred none. We owe them a great deal of thanks. Over this period of time, the church kept meeting, and the county could never trace any kind of outbreak of COVID to us, and the Lord protected us. We also knew the statistics of COVID, and we've given those to you as time has gone on. Over the same period of time, since then to this day, we've received, I think, nearly 800 new members. So this has been a great strategy for church growth. And for all of you who have come during this period of time, we give you a very special welcome. Now, the lawsuit resolution, just a few things that I can point out. All charges and all injunctions against Grace Community Church were dropped. Thus, the county did not have the right to force us to limit capacity, meet outside, mandate masks, because they allowed other organizations and businesses to function without those restraints. They couldn't do it to us. Secondly, our lease with the county for the Wash parking lot was fully restored. Thus, the county revoked our lease vindictively, since for 45 years we had no other issues with the lease. We now have the lease back. We're thankful for that. Thirdly, the county and state were both ordered to pay $400,000 in legal fees to the Thomas More Society, recoup their costs. And the county and the state, I don't know where it all divided up, but they had to pay $1 million for their own attorneys plus $800,000 for ours. This indicated that not only the counties, but even the governor's regulations were unconstitutional, and that they are at fault for having this lawsuit at all. Most remarkably, in the case of the majority of lawsuits, every party pays their own legal fees, but in this case, for the state and county to cover the costs of both attorneys is a clear recognition that they knew they couldn't prevail against us. They didn't want to go to court, and they settled out of court. Precedent established in the case, the state cannot constrain churches by regulations that are harsher than those imposed on other businesses. Churches are just as essential as anything else. And in the opinion of our lawyers, the settlement is nothing less than a total victory and complete vindication of our position. And we don't take the credit, right? We thank the Lord. We give him all the praise. People have asked me about courage. I get that question quite a bit. You seem to have a lot of courage. It's really not about courage. It's really faith. I trust that if we obey the Lord, he'll honor us. And it may be that he might have wanted me to go to jail. That would have been fine. He would have found some way to honor me in a new jail ministry, which I'd be happy to undertake. But we do know this, that God honors faithfulness, and we have trusted him in this and said, we put ourselves in your hand. Whatever outcome you desire for us, we're happy to face. And God was gracious to us and allowed our church not only to meet, but to meet without undue illness and to meet and grow and flourish in ways that we've never seen in the history of this church. So you may have thought that this was meant for evil, but in the end, as Genesis 50 says, God meant it for good, and it caused him to be glorified.